The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it, weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio as we are live in Boulder here at the Embassy Suites at Blur Parties. There are plenty of Husker fans stirring as the sun is going to rise shortly. And what a day, what an opportunity for Nebraska football. Mark Cranack, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, Will Wilson. Fellas, how about it? It is Nebraska, it is Colorado, and it is right here with KFOR and KFORnow.com. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240, or 800-825-5865. There's a host of great folks here from Blur and Embassy Suites that, I mean, there are tubs and tubs and tubs of ice. In those tubs and in that ice is all sorts of liquid refreshment. Mark Cranack is grinning. Elijah navigated us so delicately through the mountains down from Estes.
Delicately is one way to put it.
Oh, my Lord. I mean, I thought we were in a vet, baby, instead of an Impala. And we're just weaving and hey,
okay.
Yeah, it kind of looks like.
Hey, when you're going downhill, you know, sometimes you just gotta let the momentum take you.
We get in the car this morning, we pack up.
Windows down, feeling yourself. That's good.
Right. It's 3:30 in the morning, and Elijah puts these World War I bomber goggles on and leather gloves.
That's a lie.
A scarf, throws it behind,
Okay.
and just says, let's get it done. It's like we're go-karting. Fellas, it's Nebraska-Colorado. I have not seen Coach Prime up and about yet, but according to him yesterday, no one lets someone get whooped in their own crib. Can that happen today? Whooped is a loose term when we talk Nebraska, but this thing's been all over the map, from Vegas to the line to where each programs are at with how to do a rebuild. I mean, the storylines have been thick. Over 800 credential media requests, which means Elijah and I will be on the roof with binoculars. Fine. We'll get in Folsom Field. But, guys, it feels awesome again. 4 years ago out here in Boulder for Nebraska-Colorado. That did not end the right way for Nebraska. But, a second shot at it here and a rivalry renewed. I love this. Nebraska-Colorado is what I grew up on.
Okay, this it is going to be fantastic. But can we get started with some more important things? Like, one, look at Elijah being kind of Chris's protege in terms of attire.
No.
We're not watching this right now. Hey, Elijah, don't interrupt. That's rude. All right, that's rude. No, and folks that are just listening on the radio, you can't see it. But Schmidt's a little dapper, right? Like when Schmidt does an appearance, right, he's going to dress it up a little bit. He's going to coif the hair. He's ready to eat, clean shaven from time to time. Thank God right now he's not totally paying attention as he's texting into his phone. I don't know what he's texting. He doesn't know either because he's on 10 milligrams of edibles from Colorado.
I'm posting a picture of Cousin Dino, a tribute and a shout out. Last time I was at a ball game was with Cousin Dino here. So that's what I was doing.
Well, damn it, you got to go all serious on me. Okay.
No, it's fine.
So here's Elijah. You can't see it. Elijah's got the polo shirt on, right? But that's not enough collars, really. That's not enough collars. So on top of that, the quarter zip, right? And the quarter zip down a little bit so it reveals the polo. And then on top of that, it's branded KFOR, right? Mm-hmm. Right across the right chest. If I'm looking at this right, yep, right across the right chest. And just next to him is Chris Schmidt. Oh, he's just wearing the exact same stuff. So Elijah has sort of figured out over time, if I want to be the Nebraska Sportscaster of the Year, it's pretty obvious what I got to do.
Let's make it clear. Yeah. First thing that happened yesterday, whenever I see Schmitty's wearing a KF4 quarter zip, and I say, thank God you're wearing that today because I'm wearing mine tomorrow. And he goes, oh, I'm wearing mine tomorrow too. And I go, no, you're not. And he goes, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
No. I had this idea first. I laid it out. I said, I'm wearing that tomorrow. And Schmitty goes, guess we're going to be twinning. So that's the situation where I had a backup quarter zip that is sitting on my bed at my house. I left it there, completely forgot about it. This is the only quarter zip I had. I think as the afternoon progresses, assuming the weather warms up just a little bit, I might take this quarter zip off just so I don't look exactly like Schmitty. We have different colored pants on, a different colored polo. So if I take the quarter zip off, I think we're going to be okay there. But I think the quarter zip's a professional look. And while we're here, let's get some branding out for the people that are enjoying this Blur party, which what a fantastic setup this is, Schmitty.
It's incredible. And we've had...
I wasn't done. I wasn't done.
I was hoping you were moving on.
No,
I was hoping we were moving on.
We need to move on to football.
Never.
We got to get into
Continue.
football. But
Are you at the same setup as last time in 2019 where it was
we
two
are,
hotels in a courtyard?
Yes, it is. We're Embassy Suites is kind of where we're posted up by. We're around the corner. The runs of people were frankly frightened of you because you showed up in 2019. We were posted up next to Runza in 2019. Our friend Steve Warren popped by to do a live on-site interview. Husker name drop there. But I just think the amount of Runzas that you talked about eating, I didn't do an official count, frightened them. So we have been exiled to the emergency exit near the ATM. And we're going to be caddy corner from our friends at Gary Michaels. Hey, shout out to Big Red of the Rockies, Gary Michaels. We had an amazing time last night, the Battle in Boulder event at the Ridgeline Hotel. I got a chance to sit down with Tommy Frazier and Adam Carricker and do a kind of a hot seat Q&A on
second and third name drop of the morning. Go on.
Yeah, we're it's a bingo card Saturday is what we're doing. So that was great. Our friends at Sauter Heyman, our friends at Lazari's also helping make this road trip happen. But guys, let's dive into a little football here. And the eyeballs on this ball game, this Colorado-Nebraska game is kind of co-headlining week 2 of college football. It was supposed to be all about Bama and Texas. Okay. The Saban v. Sark showdown, but Coach Prime and the reality TV that he is and what he's brought to this program, instant credibility because of last Saturday's win at TCU. Cranack, you and I got to watch that while we were in Minneapolis. Meanwhile, the tenor and tone of Nebraska and what could have been same coach, same result, which isn't the case. That's not fair to put on Matt Rule. But it's super important today for Nebraska to have a good showing. I think it's quite honestly super important for a win, but it is game 2 of a 10-year. There's plenty of time this season. There's plenty of time in the Matt Rule era for Nebraska to get flipped. But you can see what type of juice and reaction, overreaction perhaps, can be a part of it. I mean, it's been the week of Buff love, right? Well, you get a win here today if you're Nebraska, fellas. And I'm not saying Nebraska vaults into the top 25. I'm not saying Nebraska's a long shot bet for a playoff. No, none of that. But from a changing the conversation standpoint about Nebraska football on a national scene, as a program, beyond the brand, it now becomes, well, it's a team that's maybe going to get turned around quicker with the Rule era. And this would be big for this football team that has had so many missteps over the last few years. I think they have a good shot to do it today because of their style. And it's going to be downhill. It's going to be ground and pound. Nebraska is going to have to be the toughest guy in a bar fight today with their conference identity. And that is ground and pound, physical football. That's how they win today.
Well, the question to me, Schmitty, is how many times have we seen Utah go up against the Pac-12 powers? Can Nebraska turn this into a Utah versus a USC, a Utah versus an Oregon? That's how you got to go and do it, because how many times do you go into that USC and Utah game and the national media is talking about, look at the playmakers that USC has, look at Caleb Williams, look at the speed they have all over. And then what does Utah do? They ground and pound them and beat them. What was the final score last year? Like 30-10?
The first rodeo was closer. The second one, though, was just destruction.
It was a beatdown.
Then you go to the Rose Bowl and you see like a Penn State, right? You see a Penn State destroy a physical rough and tumble Utah team. So to your point, yeah, I mean, it is it is all about style here, that while Colorado's got it, while they rebuild, kind of the old Mike Leach blueprint, be entertaining while you suck. Well, Colorado doesn't suck, at least so far through 1 week. But this is going to be huge for Nebraska to try and hammer away.
And we talk about the national perception. I see ESPN pulled up on one of the TVs in here. What are they showing? They're showing Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter previewing the game.
Exactly.
And we're listening to a national
listen to
talk
your buddy
show.
Dari.
Yeah, I wasn't going to name drop, but we're listening to Dari and Mel on the way in.
Dari.
And what do they talk about? They talk about, man, Shedeur Sanders, NFL scouts got to be drooling over him. Man, Travis Hunter, NFL scouts got to be drooling over him. And Nebraska, Ty Robinson, their best defensive player, he's out. They're setting this up as Colorado has got the playmakers to go out there and really go dominate Nebraska. And it kind of comes down to that disrespect portion from Nebraska. If can you turn that into a physical program that has motivation on a Saturday morning, 10 a.m. in Boulder, to go out and physically assert yourself against Colorado. Because, Colorado does have playmakers, but it's been in small sample size. We've seen them in one Power 5 game. What does Nebraska have?
Yep.
Nebraska has lines of scrimmage. I know the D-line depth isn't quite there in terms of Big Ten experience, but Nebraska has guys on the offensive line, on that defensive line, all over the defense that have played a ton of Big Ten football. And stylistically, the Big Ten is rough and tumble. That's what Nebraska knows. Colorado, from what we've seen, it's small sample size. They don't know that just yet. Are they going to be able to handle that? We'll find out here in a couple of hours. They might be able to stand up to the physical test that is Nebraska. But what I do know is that's going to be Nebraska's game plan today, to be the more physical football team. If Nebraska can do that, I think they give themselves a really good chance to win.
Well, and we're doing a lot of projecting here, too. Everybody's doing projecting as they're talking about Nebraska and Colorado. And you mentioned it because of that small sample size. It's 1 week. Think about the perception that Colorado, the perception shift that Colorado has experienced just in the last week. I mean, most serious football people are just like, Colorado's going to be a little bit rough to watch this year, I mean, bringing in 68,000 new players, never been done before. You got no continuity on the lines. Yeah, they got some playmakers, but God, their lines are terrible. It's just not going to work out. You go from that all the way to now, we're having these. Travis Hunter is probably the best player in college football. He's probably going to win the Heisman. Okay, settle down. He might, but the dude's had one good game in Division I football, right? That's it. He's had one. Let's settle down. It's going to be okay.
And Mark, to that point, I just saw something this week, and I think this is kind of what you're hitting on. It said, wise men draw observations from week 1. Foolish men draw conclusions from week 1. An observation you can make from week 1, man, Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are good at football. A conclusion you can make is that Travis Hunter's going to win the Heisman. He's the best player in college football. Foolish men make conclusions in week 1. Wise men draw observations. The observations are Colorado's got some playmakers. And Nebraska's going to have to stand up to that. And the observation I made from week 1 is, how does Nebraska do that? It's from physical football, rough and tumble football, go win the lines of scrimmage.
Listen, and Nebraska fans, many of them, I would count myself among these folks, have been asking for this for 2 decades. And it seems like you finally, literally, 2 decades. And we finally have a person in place that talks about agree, right? He seems to say that we want to be that physical team. We want to line up. We want to establish the ground game, right? It's what Nebraska's been missing, essentially, for damn near 20 years. Of course, you've had a few good years in there where under Tim Beck, under a few others, where the offense was a force to be reckoned with on the ground. Here's the thing, though, and we talked a little bit about it last week, is that can be your game plan. That can be your talk. That can be your formation. Those can be a handful of your plays. But is it truly what you're going to be about? And are you going to be okay sacrificing a random drive in the first and second quarter in order to impose that cumulative effect that is the whole point of the running game in the first place? Are you going to actually make those calls, or are you going to look down at your play sheet and say, oh my God, it's 3rd and 4 and we got 3 wide and we're at the 47. That means pass over the middle, multiple reads. What are you going to do? You're going to stick to that play sheet? Or are you going to say, you know what? Nope. We're going to keep establishing it. We're going to keep establishing it. What are you going to do as an offensive staff to make sure? Are you going to sit there and say, well, we don't want to run Jeff Sims too much because we're afraid he we can't lose him. Or you're going to be like, that's the best chance for us we're going to go over tackle real quick, pick up those couple yards, Sims, lower your shoulder, let's go. What are they going to do? That's what it's going to come down to.
Nothing should be off the table today, period. And if that means Sims is running more than 19 times, do it. If that means
his over-under should be 15. 15. Put it right at 15. That's his over-under. Every game.
Yeah, let's get into Satterfield, fellas. Let's talk about Satterfield for a second.
Well, and now I want to hit on Satterfield because Tim Bob Kitzmiller, great friend, great salesman with advertising here at a radio station. Love Tim Bob. He texts me.
Name maybe ever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And Tim Bob is one of those like throwback linebackers. Lives up to the name.
And he wants to talk O-line because he heard my point about Nebraska being veteran on the offensive line. He says, but they haven't been good during that time. That's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Yeah, exactly.
And the
let's
question,
run the football.
They got a lot of experience being
let's
scrappy.
run the football.
Wow.
It's a great point. He's not wrong there. And I think the question that we need to find out today is how much development has Donnie Raiola made on that offensive line to be able to go and take on a Pac-12 football team that isn't known for their lines of scrimmage? Is Nebraska's offensive line not cutting it in the Big Ten, or are they not cutting it in general? And
bigger picture,
they have a chance to show some things today, to show some development. And as I texted him back, hey, Saturday mornings are for excitement, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about being geared up for the game, being ready for the game. And hey, maybe we're going to roll out there in the first quarter. We're going to see this offensive line isn't going to cut it even against the Pac-12, but I feel like that rough and tumble nature of the Big Ten, how Big Ten offensive lines that don't even wow you on Saturdays through October and through November, they show up to the Rose Bowl, and what do? They go kick the crap out of a Pac-12 defensive line. And maybe that's not what's going to happen today, but I do believe that despite the fact that this offensive line hasn't been good in the Big Ten, another offseason of development and just that experience you get going up against guys like, look who they've gone up against in the past couple of years with Aiden Hutchinson and all those monsters from Michigan,
Ohio
monsters
State,
from Ohio
Iowa,
State,
Wisconsin,
monsters from Iowa, guys that are playing in the NFL now. These are the
Northwestern,
guys that
even
Nebraska's
Northwestern,
offensive line has cut their teeth against. Yeah.
Guys, let's dive in on the offensive line in Satterfield. We just said in one side of my mouth that nothing should be off the table. To Tim Bob's point, what are you on the offensive line? What are you capable of doing well? And based on what we saw again in week 1 against Minnesota, Nebraska did well enough running the football. They did well enough running the football. Was it I-back run game? No, they had to go to the quarterback run game because they wanted to establish the running back run game. That wasn't working early, but they figured it out. They went with the quarterback run game. You need a big game out of Gabe Ervin. He needs to be a focal point today. That being said, you have parts of that offensive line that are still a work in progress. And guys like Turner Corcoran, guys like Ethan Piper, guys like Ben Scott. I mean, that the middle and the left side of the line had problems in pass protection. You're going to have enough time to hit some play action. Off of that run game, you want to get set up. So it is absolutely a Rubik's Cube right now in what Nebraska wants to do versus what they're good at. And it'll be a statement on Statement Saturday, just what your offensive line can do against a team of transfers on the defensive line that aren't deep. Nebraska needs to be able to be Nebraska at least for 4 hours this Saturday morning.
And it's a team in Colorado that they know the scouting report. They saw what Nebraska did against Minnesota. They know the game plan is going to be running the football. And I want to bring Kranak and Will in on this conversation because Will, I don't think we've heard his voice yet this morning. Got to give a shout out to producer
Will needs
extraordinaire.
Coffee and a hug, and he needs you need to come over for a steak, Will. God love you for pulling double duty the last couple of days. Can I at least get you a giant T-bone?
Yeah, and I've tried your steaks before, Schmitty. They are very good.
Yeah,
but
he's for real.
I'm going to hold you
Instagrammable.
Yeah,
I do want to get your guys' take though on what we can expect from Sims, because the running game is going to be the focal point. But if you're running into 8 and 9 man boxes every single time because you don't have the threat of the pass, what good is the rushing attack?
I need Harburg with 37 catches for 3.5 per.
But
per
what
catch.
do you guys think? I mean, we've talked about this a little bit this week on the show, and I want to get some new perspectives. What is the game plan for Sims to be able to bring his strengths to the forefront without? I mean, we saw the decision-making issues last week, the being locked in on a receiver. How does Nebraska curtail those issues on a Saturday? We've talked about rolling him out, maybe throwing more to the boundary. There needs to be some sort of game plan adjustment from Satterfield and the Husker offense to be able to bring the best out of Sims without really asking him to do too much, because we saw what happens whenever you ask him to do too much last week.
It's a bit of a paradox with him. It's interesting to try to figure out what you can do with him, because, and we talked about this before, but in the spring game, he showed it. His most accurate throws are those intermediate ones, those ones that are 8 to 14 yards, something like that, and even over the middle, right? Like around the hashes.
Give me the
he's
seam.
Very accurate. He's accurate. He leads his receivers really well. Ball comes out really nice. The problem is that against good defensive backs, while he's accurate, sometimes the defensive back gets there first. You know what I mean? Like if the defensive back wasn't there, it was going right to the receiver's hands. The problem is, do you see that DB that sees you locking in, that breaks on the ball and that comes and gets it? So he's accurate around there. And I bet you that's part of Satterfield's calculation when he's doing the play calls. Like, oh man, he can hit these. These are high percentage. It's different now, though. Right? It's different now. You're in games. There are multiple defensive backs. You're going against Colorado today, which is going to have a good defensive backfield, right? If you're Deion Sanders, best corner ever, you're going to bring in some dudes that know how to play in the secondary. So you know that they're going to be pretty good in the secondary. So what do you do if you're Satterfield and Sim? You have to keep him out of the situations where the option is to throw it into complicated coverage, right? It just can't be super complicated, at least right now with what we've seen so far from Sims. Not saying he's never going to be capable of it, but he sure as hell wasn't capable of it last week against Minnesota. He just wasn't, period. He could not throw it into complex situations. But you sell him on some play action, sell Colorado on some play action. That's your key. He can throw. It's not like he can't throw.
He's got a
but
good arm.
It needs to be simpler situations for him.
Well, and it gets back to the run game, Will, doesn't it? I mean, Nebraska needs to be able to hit a couple of deep shots off of play action. They tried for a kill shot in that fourth quarter. You need some personnel to be available, right? You need a Malachi Coleman to show off that speed, because he'll, per comments this week by the coaching staff, he's had a good week, right? He's one of those guys. You have the athleticism and speed on the team to have that guy go deep. You just don't have the experience behind it. But tell him to go run some deep routes, and you got to hit a couple of them. Worst case, you get a penalty. Best case, you get a 70-yard, Matt Harrion tribute off of an option play, and there's a quick 6. You need to be able to at least be somewhat dangerous and not so one-dimensional. Both offenses, quite frankly, are a little bit one-dimensional. Nebraska's bread and butter so far has been run game. That's what they've done best. Colorado ran for 1.6 a carry last week against TCU. They threw it around for 510 yards because their run game was not as effective as they wanted to be. So how does your offhand look this Saturday? What are you grinning about, Kranek?
I'm just reading some of the comments. And Dion came to the table at 7:25. And please, no.
We are on the air, Mark. We are on the air, Mark. So watch out with the censorship. I see that comment.
Listen, it said, please, no more than 6 passes.
I thought you were talking about the newest comment from Dion.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I haven't seen that one. Seen that one. And I would not. Oh, I see that one now.
Yeah. No, we're not going to read that on the air.
Brakes being slammed on.
Yeah, we're not going to say it. It's a comment about Mr. Sanders, the quarterback one, Shadur, and a very, I guess, I don't know, creative way to misspell his name on purpose, evoking excrement. That's the only way I could describe it.
That's a good way to describe that.
Look at you weave that.
The only way. Yeah, the only way to describe it is that. So look, today's going to be fun because of these reasons. Is that you have these clashes in philosophies. You have it when you think of the term bravado, right? You think of somebody that's brash, that just talks, right? That just talks it. Who comes? It's Dion, right? Like Dion is the poster child for bravado. There's been no one like him ever.
And he's
now,
backed it up every step of his career.
Yeah. And now he's in the limelight. He is in prime time. I mean, that's the dude's nickname, right? I've had people ask me that haven't followed it as closely, like, why do they call him Coach Prime? Like,
I've got that too.
What is that? It's like, because the dude's prime time. Like, he named himself that when he was like 20 coming into the NFL, wearing gold chains with the Jerry curl and sunglasses, and just saying, I'm about to take over the league, Right. So I'm just like, hey, now, so hey, he's in his element right now, right? They have all the attention that Deion's always craved his entire life, but does he have the dudes in the trenches, right?
Well,
are they ready to deal with that?
And something we've talked about this week on the show is, how does this Colorado team handle the attention and the pressure and the ego that's going to come? Because that's him. That's him. And he's constructed a roster that is like him in that regard. He's constructed a roster of guys that are very confident in their own abilities, guys that want the limelight. But what made Deion Sanders so special was that despite all the limelight through his playing career, even through his coaching career, he always brought it. That's what made him his best, was whenever he had that attention. Does his team follow that same mold? Because I look at Travis Hunter today. That's a guy defensively that makes a whole bunch of plays. That's also a guy defensively that loves the limelight. That's the guy that loves to make the big play. Does Marcus Satterfield, instead of avoiding that guy, does he go target Travis Hunter? Do you go run a double move on him early in the game and say, hey, you're going to want to make this play on national television? Do you run the double move? No?
This is the exact kind of thinking.
Incomplete.
I hear you, Elijah. Like, in theory, beautiful idea. Of course you do that, right? You tack that guy.
But do you go test and see, is this team overconfident right now?
No, you do not test. No, you run the damn ball. Right? Like, that's what you do. Seriously, like, for real. That it's that kind of thinking that I hope Satterfield has that restraint today. Like, it's good in theory. I know, like, that would be amazing, but just hold yourself back. Do what you're supposed to. Eat your damn vegetables. Eat your damn vegetables today, right? Like, it's not.
I think
you have to keep target him in the ground game. Isolate him there, and have Liebentritt or a fullback, just Bonner, target him in the run game. I
think you. I don't want to say lull him to sleep, but I think you got to be right when you do try and attack in the air. And that is, if it's been, to your point, let's see how the young man likes to set the edge and hold up in the run game.
Right.
Great. Hammer away at that. But just as he's not thinking about coverage or a pick six, that's when you hit him. That's when you hit him. Can your timing be what it needs to be? But no, let's see if he's like a lot of cornerbacks, well, even like Deion, making business decisions. You know what I mean?
Right.
Deion was a great returner and a cover man, and he was great against Jerry Rice and named the great NFL wide receivers. All of that being said, Deion wasn't on a lot of highlight films for one-on-one tackles.
No, exactly. Right. Like, are you going to be on the edge? Do you expect Travis Hunter to be like a, I don't know, DiCaprio Boodle type who would shed a receiver and come up and stick you? Or are you going to be Lamar Jackson junior year? I'm not throwing the dude under the bus for good. He's bouncing around in the league, but there was a time where he was not interested in any way, shape, or form of hitting a tailback in space. But he's like, no, I'm good. Even though I'm a giant beast, I'm not hurting this body. Are you kidding me? Like, I think there's you could imagine that there is a fair degree of that in Colorado, or at least you have to test whether or not it is, because your only options at tail, your top two options, those are bruisers. Nebraska's not coming in with just some little scat back, right? They're coming in with some dudes that are lower their shoulder and hit you, and they weigh 215 to 230. And they're motivated. Like, those dudes will wear on you after a while if you let them, right? So you test that. You absolutely test that today. There's another little silver lining about today that I'm super interested in. I don't know. Do we got to get to break first, or are we good?
I don't know that do we have a break this hour?
we have one in the log, but I don't think it's necessary that we hit it. If we want to roll up until 8.
Keep going. Let's give the people what they want.
I think
the people don't want to break.
No, and I think our break will happen probably at 57.
Yep.
So we're going to go till 57. This first hour of the weekend edition of Hail Varsity, of course, on KFOR. You hear it on 1015, 1240 AM, KFORnow.com. Hour 2 is also streamed here on the KFOR Facebook, on KFOR Twitter, at KFOR Radio, and then Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. So from 8 to 9, jump onto your device, your laptop, your smartphone, and catch hour 2 as we take you up as close to kickoff as possible. Real Red Reaction follows live on KFOR as soon as this game is over. So keep that in your back pocket.
Yes.
I had to interject there. So no, we don't need to get to break till 57 after. Continue, my son.
We're getting it's for the.
We've hit a lot of offense. We've hit Satterfield. We've hit Sims. Okay. We've hit running game. How about them black shirts? How about them black shirts? Are you wearing a black shirt? Do you have your black shirt on, Kranek?
I mean, quite like literally, it is a shirt that is black, but it is not a black shirt. If you know what I'm saying.
So it's a black shirt. They deserved a lot of praise. They also had 5 minutes they want back.
Yeah,
from last Thursday.
Oh yeah,
that's been a little bit of a wrestling match, hasn't it? With the defensive performance on paper, how well they tackled, how physical they were. That was all wonderful for Nebraska fans. Flipping it around on 4th and 10, you got beat for a touchdown. On 3rd and 10, you didn't make an interception in the end zone, and then Minnesota was able to get a couple of first downs to get set up for that game winner. As good as they played, they didn't finish. That's the whole topic here for Nebraska, and it's been an ongoing discussion point, but it's going to be the defense that's going to have to be called upon today. Offense got to do enough today, yes, in the run game. But it's going to be about the defense physically getting after Shedeur. I don't think TCU's pass rush was incredible. Clearly, if he went for 5-10, he gets the ball out quickly. But Nebraska, and I think Mr. White, science, Coach Tony is going to have something for this offense. As good as they've been, it's going to be up to the black shirts to keep this thing from, I think 28's the point total. Again, that 30-point number. Can't get much beyond that. I mean, I don't know what Nebraska's offense can score. I said they win 28-24, but it's really seriously about the Nebraska defense. What kind of tone do they set? Do you smack some of those guys after the catch, right? I mean, are you going to be able to physically impose your will on that offensive side?
You know, I think that you are going to see at least that. I think that's who they are. I think they're a good hitting team. One thing that I'm not sure if it came across on television or not, because I haven't watched the full game back, but in person, Nebraska and Minnesota, it was really clear who the more physical team was, and it was Nebraska, and it wasn't close. It really wasn't. It really looks like that Minnesota, yes, they made some plays, but damn, they had to really, really grind for those plays, right?
They had to change their offense. They had to change their offense. They had to throw 44 times.
Dude, yeah, and think about that touchdown catch the guy made. Incredible play, right? Being able to drag his foot the way he did. Callie McManus on the rollout. He was running for his life a lot. And when he wasn't, he was getting drilled, right? Even early on. He got hit quite a few times. So, like, I'm not concerned about that part. I'm concerned about stamina today. All right. And you talk about how you are defensively. And I mean, look, the elevation is no joke. You know, people that act like it's so funny to me when people are like, oh, who cares if it's hot, if it's cold, if there's altitude, blah, blah. Like, that's a factor. Do
not
sucks. Rule that out.
I'm wheezing right now.
Yeah, it's a huge factor. And it's exacerbated by, this is one thing you got to give Dion credit for and how he's fashioned Colorado so far, is that, you know, a lot of teams do hurry up, but they do some like warp speed hurry up stuff. I mean, they would get to the line really quick. And that cumulative effect, if you're in good enough shape, which His team has been training in those mountains the whole damn time, right? They're going to be ready to go. That's where Terrence Crawford goes to get ready for a boxing match, right? He goes to the Manitou Incline, and he's like running that every single. Like you get your lungs, you get your heart right. So they're going to be in a little bit better shape. So a little silver lining about last week, Ty Robinson, right? Ty Robinson gets hit for a targeting penalty, and that means he's not playing until the second half. That could actually be an X factor, silver lining, good thing for Nebraska, because he's just going to be chilling in the first half. He's not playing. He's not getting worn down. He's not chasing down Colorado for 30 to 40 plays. He is fresh as hell, right? And you bring him into the second half, having not played at all, and he was dominant last week. He really was. He was literally just shoving offensive linemen out of the way and getting after the quarterback. He looked really good. So he's going to come in fresh in the second half. He's probably Nebraska's best defensive lineman. So Colorado is not even going to get a sniff at who he is. So if Nebraska can withstand early with what they have behind him, great in the first half. Then you bring him in fresh. I mean, it's almost like you just picked up a free agent in the middle of a game. You know what I mean? You're sliding in. You're sliding in your best player in the second half once the rest of the team's starting to wear down. He could be a nice little spark. That could be a little silver lining that could help today.
You got to survive.
Because I think in the fourth quarter, you got to look out for the Buffs, man, because they're going to be in shape and they're going to be ready to go.
But the thing is the question is can Nebraska's back end do enough to allow your defensive line to assert yourself in the game? If it's 1 and 3 step drops from the shotgun from Shedeur Sanders all game long, what is your defensive line going to do? You need to get something from your back end that Colorado isn't allowed to dink and dunk you down the field all game. And part of that is rallying to the football. If it's 2 and 3 yard routes where they're breaking a tackle and going for 7 or 8 and picking up a first down, there's no reason for Colorado to need to go deep all that much. And that's kind of what they did against TCU, is they were able to dink and dunk TCU down the field. And then whenever they did take that shot, TCU was so worried about covering that underneath stuff that there's nobody over the top to be able to cover that. So can your defense tackle well, especially in that secondary? If you can stop a 2 to 3 yard route after 2 to 3 yards, you're forcing Colorado to have to go further down the field. So it comes down to tackling on the back end, and it comes down to making sure there's no busts on that back end, because Nebraska did a great job with that last week. I think Minnesota's longest play was 20 yards last week. Colorado's offense strikes me a little bit of what Nebraska had under Scott Frost, which was, they can dink and dunk you down the field, but if they're going to get points on a drive, they need a play of 20-plus yards to hit on that drive to move you down the field and to keep that drive advancing. Nebraska can keep Colorado dinking and dunking, force them to get impatient, allow your defensive line to assert themselves in the game. That's where Nebraska's defensive line, I think, can really make a difference today. But it starts on that back end, keeping everything in front of you, rallying to the football, and forcing Colorado to get a little bit impatient offensively. And you know what? Now Sanders is getting into the 5 and 7 step drops where your defensive line can make a move and have time to get to him.
You're right on with the secondary needing to be bulletproof. You're right on with Robinson and being a factor in the second half. I'm bringing this up again because it was a nightmare for a lot of Nebraska fans, where you have a slower run-stopping linebacker matched up in coverage against a fast slot wide receiver in an Orange Bowl or a Fiesta Bowl, or against Bean O'Brien and the Washington Huskies. That's one from 30 years ago. But it is going to be about Nebraska's linebackers. Dylan Edwards, how many catches does that kid have out of the backfield? Nebraska, it's going to be Reimer. It's going to be Bullock, presumably. How much Henrich do you see? What's he available to do? What's his skill set do when it comes to matching up against Colorado's slot guys or running backs out of the backfield? Can you be as good or better against elite skill talent side to side, north and south in space? Because that middle area is a safe throw for Colorado's offense right now. At least it was against TCU. And don't kid yourself, Colorado's going to go back to that until it's stopped. Nebraska, and I love, what Reimer's been at Nebraska. Just a great story, phenomenal football player. Love the Bullocks kids, both of them from their time at prep, the way they grind and how well they've developed. But it's going to be Nebraska's second level that is also so important today, because you miss a tackle, Colorado's got the dudes, fellas, to go 8-yard gain is a now 60-yard gain because of yak yards.
If you got to watch if Nebraska is able to get pressure defensively without having to bring extra guys. If they're able to just get pressure with their D line, whoever that is, and they by the way, they started with a 4-man front last week, right? So everybody talks about the 3-3-5. Will that hold up? Like, they can mix it up. Tony White's creative enough to do that. So if they're getting pressure there, I think he's creative enough to even drop dudes like Robinson or Hutmacher, drop them to the second level out of nowhere, right? That was one of
Zone blitz it.
greatest tricks back in the day, right?
The old Sue drop back and cover the middle of the field.
Oh yeah, he did that with Crick.
Yep.
He did that with his interior guys from time to time, and the offensive lineman kind of doesn't even know what to do. They're just sitting there, and so you just have this extra big defender plug in that exact same area that you're trying to go to, and you can bat some balls down, you can get some picks, you can discourage the throw, give time for your pursuing defensive lineman to make a sack. So that's going to be a big key. I think Colorado's a little better on the offensive line than maybe we thought they would be coming in. Their center that they have, he was a freshman All-American last year. He was pretty good.
He's
right?
talented,
Yeah, and they brought in he's a sophomore now, and then they bring in I think he was the Division II like offensive lineman of the year or something to that effect. They got him to transfer in, and he's like a 4th-year guy, 5th-year guy, something like that. So you got some guys that are okay, that know what they're doing. They've played a lot of football. I don't know if they have like a number 1 draft pick or number 2 draft pick, but they're probably a little better than maybe folks had hoped, right? Not impossible, but competent, right? They're not an incompetent offensive line. Defensive line, don't really know yet. Don't really know with Colorado. The TCU made it appear that they're lacking in just straight up competence and the ability to play at this level, right? We'll see. We'll see if that holds up, and I think Nebraska is going to test it. But at least on the offensive side of the ball, when you compare it to Nebraska's defense, on paper, small sample size with what we've seen, it seems like Nebraska has a significant advantage there. And I think they get reinforcements in the second half with Robinson, which is going to be a nice little game changer. And then you'd mentioned those flare outs, those shorter passes, those quick throws over to the corners. Think about who Nebraska has on the corners, and think about how good they are in recognition and blowing stuff up like that. Hartzog was a beast last week doing that against Minnesota.
Yes.
Quentin Newsom has been doing that for years.
Well,
those guys are really good at recognition and coming up and making a stick.
And
it's
something
payday.
something that Schmidt and I talked about on the way over here to Blur Parties, which awesome party. If you're here in Boulder, need a place to come pregame. Blur Parties is your place. It's at the Embassy Suites. We're about a half mile away from Folsom Field, and the setup here is awesome. The drinks, I believe, are about to start getting flowing. Schmidt and I have our wristbands. We'll save those for after the game. But one of the things we talked about was that Quentin Newsom kind of flew under the radar last week against Minnesota. How many times did Callie McManus even throw the ball his way?
Maybe.
Twice, maybe. You didn't hear Quentin Newsom's name all that much, and I think his name flew under the radar, which is a good sign from a cornerback, and he's a guy that has a chance to make himself a ton of money today. If I'm Tony White, I don't think it's a difficult game plan to say, hey, Quentin Newsom, he's the best guy in our secondary. We're going to match him up with Travis Hunter as much as we can because Travis Hunter is the most explosive guy they have offensively. We need to find a way to slow him down. I think you're going to see Quentin Newsom matched up on Travis Hunter a lot. I think the NFL scouts are going to be watching to see not only what Travis Hunter does against his Husker defense, but also what does Quentin Newsom do against Travis Hunter. If Quentin Newsom has himself a good day, this is a chance to start your draft stock and start your draft hype. This is an opportunity, and we talked about that yesterday and a couple days ago on the show. What kind of opportunity Nebraska has today. Quentin Newsom's a guy that might have more opportunity than anybody else in the football field to make a name for himself. If you can slow down Travis Hunter and that Colorado passing attack, that's NFL payday big time. So what can he do today? That's going to be a big question because Nebraska fans have loved what they've seen from Quentin Newsom. Quentin Newsom, late in the cycle, gets a single-digit number. Go out and prove why you're a single-digit guy today and go out there and make yourself some money in the NFL.
He is so long and athletic. You mentioned Newsom, Hartzog. How about Mr. Singleton? How nice was he from a tackling standpoint? They'd send him on some blitzes. I love this flexibility Nebraska has defensively because they've got about 3 or 4 different hybrid guys that can cover, that can hit, that can come down and run support. But they've been well done from a coaching and development standpoint with their in-space tackling. Just talking to a couple of folks that have had a chance to watch practice this week. Listen, Nebraska's locked in. Nebraska's got no hangover from last Thursday. It's not going to beat you twice. Nebraska has had absolutely fantastic practices. They focused well, and Rule did not go easy. When he talked about not feeling sorry for yourself, they didn't. They beat the hell out of each other Tuesday and Wednesday. Nebraska is ready to make this thing a war physically, and that back end is Nebraska's strength defensively, and it's got to show up today.
Here's 100%. And here's what worries me a little bit about Colorado today, though, is these things can all be true, right? Nebraska can get all the pressure that we're all talking about. They could take away a Travis Hunter, and they could do a really good job of that today, right? I wonder at this point if Colorado is exactly like Penn State was, and God, what would that have been? 2016, 17? Forget the quarterback's name. Might even been a little later than that. But when they had that improbable run.
When they beat Ohio State, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember the quarterback's name for the life of me, but he was a hell of a player. Really liked him. He might still be bouncing around in the league. But they just hit the most ridiculous amount of deep balls. You could be shutting down their offense the entire game, and then just boom, boom, boom. They hit you on these deep ones. They hit you on these broken plays. That's going to be a huge key for Nebraska today too, because it is unlikely that you're going to keep that fleet group of receivers for Colorado from getting theirs from time to time today. Trace McSorley, thank you. We just got the comment in. Thank you. Brandon and Brennan both commented in and said, yes, Trace McSorley. Do you remember that team? That team was so damn lucky. They seemingly were so damn lucky all year.
They were the master of 50-50 balls. They won. They lost a Rose Bowl. They beat Wisconsin. They beat Penn State, and it was
Ohio State.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, they beat Ohio State. It was year 3 of Franklin, and they had to flip, right? Yep. They got hot. But you're right. Can you win the 50-50 today?
Yeah. So they're going to get theirs. So that's the biggest concern I have is Colorado going to be like that, right? Is Colorado going to be a team that you're shutting down, but damn, they got loose for just 5 plays out of 80, and picked up, 290 yards on those alone. And, that I don't think there is a point today where Nebraska can feel comfortable with any kind of sort of traditional way that you would measure a game where you're like, oh, you're up 10, 7 minutes left. It's all good. Like, no.
It never goes that way here.
No.
Never. Never goes that way in Boulder.
And that's probably the altitude effect that we were talking about earlier, right? You can be a fourth quarter team bravado-wise all you want, but are you a fourth quarter team lungs-wise? Right? Is your body adapted to that? And Colorado sure as hell is. And in the fourth quarter, going back years, you cannot count those dudes out. You just can't. I mean, this thing's going to come absolutely down to it. So even if Nebraska does everything right, all it takes is Travis Hunter to leak out once, right? Mm-hmm. Changes the entire game. And that threat is there all game long. All game long, every series, every snap. It is Nebraska. Do they have enough mental fortitude? Do they have enough physical conditioning to keep up with all of that?
Real quick here. And again, hour 2 streaming on KFOR Facebook, KFOR Twitter, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter at HVarsity Radio, and then Hail Varsity YouTube channel is hour 1 here on KFOR, KFORnow.com. What do you take away if you're Nebraska? And this is Dion's comment in the stream. All right, dude. Colorado's got speed, And Guy chimes in, what about Horn? I mean, Colorado's got 4 guys coming off 100-yard receiving games. So, all right, you're going to pull the Bill Belichick. We're going to take your best weapon away. Great. There's other choices. There's other menu items for Colorado. I think that the key for me is, can you rattle Sanders? Can you beat him up?
Mm-hmm.
Can you make him have to wait a half second before he gets – can you keep him out of rhythm? He got in great rhythm last week. And can you keep Colorado one-dimensional? And that means not get stung by their run game. I mean, what do you take away, Will? Will's like,
we'll
shut up,
sing 1 minute. We'll sing we have 1 minute.
I was just saying we have 1 minute till we got to hit that break.
Sure.
But, the one thing that I'm thinking about is, and we'll talk about this in the second hour, is, we talk about slowing down the game. And don't you guys think that can go wrong pretty quick if we give up, a few quick scores and the offense isn't quite going right?
Is
What's the
that
alternative
for hour 2? I think Will just dropped a preview of the topic in hour 2, right? Is Nebraska going to be able to rush 3 or 4 today, get away with it, drop guys into coverage? What do you take away, by the way, real quick before we hit the break? You take away the deep ball by every means possible. Every means possible. Hold an extra guy back if you need to. Take the deep ball away. Make them dink and dunk for an entire series all game long.
Well, do that and make sure you tackle. Hour 2 on the way, weekend edition. Hail Varsity on the road here in Boulder at Blur Parties. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kradak, Elijah Herbal, Will Wilson. We'll check in with Brandon Vogel, a counter read. That's on the way with Hail Varsity live in Boulder.
Cool. We are off the air.
Well, you still are on the stream, so hello, stream listeners. Welcome to the behind-the-scenes access.
Hello, everybody.
We'll be back with Brandon Vogel here in a couple of minutes. Schmitty's going to go find himself some more coffee, and we'll check back in whenever Brandon Vogel hops back on.
All right.
Hey, this is great. So we're still on. We can still talk to the people.
We can. Will's headed looks like to the bathroom. I thought maybe we'd get some ads playing in the background, but I am also going to try to find myself some coffee. So,
yeah, some laced coffee or what?
No.
It's legal, Elijah. It's legal. You're fine.
Not pregame, maybe postgame.
Legal. Okay, got it. Yeah, no. Hey, the hot mic is on purpose, Brennan. We got Brennan talking.
Yeah, it's not a hot mic if it's intentional. That's just a mic.
Yeah, it's just a mic. I'll tell you what, too. People have been chiming in like, what about this receiver? What about this receiver? What about this? Yeah, they got some dudes. I mean, they really do. They got some dudes. But just, make them do like a 12, 13 play drive, right? Just seriously take away the deep stuff. Vic Blaze, talk away, Mark. We're talking, bro. Let's do it. So Chris, where'd Chris go?
I think he went off to go find some more coffee. I could be incorrect, though. I don't know. He just kind of disappeared, so.
Yeah. Maybe the coffee's already kicking in. Maybe
it's not
Chris
kicking enough.
Can.
Alarm went off this morning, 3:45 a.m. Boulder time, or I guess Estes Park time, because we had to make the drive down to Boulder this morning. So all you folks listening,
how long of a drive is that?
About 45 minutes.
Okay. All right.
So yeah,
you were waking up when I went to bed, which is pretty funny.
3:45 Boulder time, which is 4:45 Nebraska time. Let's make that clear. It's not as bad as it sounds.
I forgot about the time change.
Well, we heard Matt Rule talk earlier this week about how, like, back in the day before, like, smartphones were a thing and the phones auto-adjusted, they would just stay on whatever time zone when they were on whenever they went from East Coast to West Coast and whatnot. So we pretty much did the same thing. I mean, went to bed at 9 o'clock last night, and that's 10 o'clock Central time. So we made sure to get some sleep. And maybe it's closer to 10 o'clock local time, but we're rolling through. I need to go find a Red Bull.
Yeah. All right. So Cindy's calling you out, Will. She been yawning the whole show. So it looks like he slept in his hat. Oh, Will, calling you out. Now,
radio talk show. Huh.
I know. Now, listen, though, in your defense, you were rocking duty last night, right?
Yes.
Are you in school? You're in school right now, or are you out of school?
No, I graduated 2 years ago. Yeah. So
Okay.
not anymore. Sydney, I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
And Will, I was going to try to give you the excuse of, hey, college student, like it's a tough life out there. You had to study, but I can't even do that.
I
Did
should've
Chris go
lied.
smoke a fatty? Rick asks. No, slim one.
No, I did
Yeah.
not. I can't breathe and walk in this state. So
Hey, y'all got to go see Chad, by the way. The fresh baked and Bear Creek Distillery sweet. You know how there's those sweets at ground level?
Oh yeah, he's here.
Yeah, they're there. Just
Okay.
go. Yeah, I don't know if Debo from Bear Creek is there or not. You might not recognize the faces, but
Like
seriously, go
Debo
over there.
from Friday, the movie Friday.
No, that's what he's named.
That's my bike,
Anyways.
punk.
No, but those dudes got a suite there.
So
They got a suite there,
yeah,
and like it's
yeah.
labeled and everything. So,
Yeah.
guy, go say what's up to him, man. You can get a free drink.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
So here's the problem. We got these yo-yos with a speaker to our right.
Oh, really?
I gotta say, we can't hear any of it, man. It sounds really good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because the competing radio friends across the way have speakers like turned up, like projecting into us.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
professional.
Well, that's too bad.
But they're
Hey,
an hour
we've just been talking to our people over here too.
No, it's good.
We got Will is back from Kegs and Eggs. You don't have to smoke it, Chris. Get the brownies. Yeah, he's got a good point. Brownies, gummies. I think there's even tinctures, like you can just like drop it.
I have been hammering a leave all week.
Have you?
Just sinus.
What's going on? Let's talk.
Well, I'm
Let's talk.
good.
Yeah. What happened?
Sinus, chest, all that stuff.
I might have gave that to you.
Oh.
You guys spooning this week or what's up?
No spoonage.
No, not
This is the most interesting commercial break ever because there's actually no commercial breaks going. You're just getting the behind the scenes access of us.
I know. It's fun. I know. And it's not a whole lot different, I guess, than what the normal show is. Maybe we talk a little louder, maybe a little closer together,
Yeah.
That's about it.
Are we gonna play the open? Let me know if you want me to play that. Maybe.
Yeah. We got to reset everybody, especially the
All
folks
right.
listening to the stream right now.
Well,
We got to reset them.
Brandon's a timely individual, and he usually shows up on the Saturday morning show in the next 60 seconds to 2 minutes. So if we just want to get rolling,
Is he
we
there?
probably can. He's not there yet, but or not here. No.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know if he was coming or not.
The lovely people gave me a Red Bull. They were confused why I didn't want any vodka with it, but
Well, you should be able to get started with that by now. It's not even going to really kick in until like 40 after.
We got to walk to the stadium in an hour.
That's true. So, are you guys seriously going to have to be on the roof or something today? Like, do you even know where you're going to go?
I don't think so. We got in early enough that I think we're okay.
Okay.
So,
be pretty cool if we were.
Is it kind of liberal where you can go press box or you can go field or like how does that work?
Look who just walked in. It's one Bill Hooks here.
Wow.
In the house.
Okay.
Wow.
Walked, not crawled.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon's here, so should we get rolling here with hour
rock,
2?
Let's rock. Yep.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Back with you. It's hour 2. It's the weekend edition, Hail Varsity. We are here in Boulder at Blur Parties. Chris Schmidt, Mark Cranack, Elijah Herbal, Will Wilson. We welcome in with Counter Read, Brandon Vogel at Brandon L. Vogel. It's where you find him on Twitter. So, Vogues, you've had some time in your career bartending. Did you ever give somebody that weird look when they walked up and asked for a Red Bull and no vodka? Because it just happened to one Elijah Herbal. He's drinking Red Bull, no vodka. He is not wanting to weave his way, Taylor Martinez style, Big 12 championship game to the stadium later. He's doing well. He's focused in. He's got his drink. But did you make judgments on those that ordered Red Bull?
No, because to date myself, most of my bartending days were pre-Red Bull, so that wasn't.
I was just thinking
wasn't really an
Yep.
option for me.
Was just thinking that. What was your specialty, Brandon, when you were a bartender? Did you like to do the shaken, the stir? Did you do the fancy stuff? Was it a place where it's just like, Jack and Coke and we're good? What kind of, like, how deep did you get on your cocktails?
I was not I did not have a mustache that needed waxed. I would not call myself a mixologist. I was much more of a beer with a whiskey shot type of guy. So and at
Volume
most of the
player.
places I bartended, that was all you really needed to do. So it was good.
Well,
More of
we've
a
got
volume guy. Yep.
we've got all sorts of. That's so awkward. I go to the fist bump and then a handshake and then a fist bump, and I'm a goon. Forgive me.
That man's in a suit with no sleeves. I
know
love
he has no sleeves on. He's drinking some sort of, dare I say, red Kool-Aid. That was a kind of a discussion point yesterday. What are you drinking this morning? And it was always Bloody Marys. Every time we were in Boulder, the occasional screwdriver, because this is the second 10 a.m. kick I'll have been a part of. I think I have to go back to 97. The 97 game was a 10 o'clock kick, or 10:30, and it worked out well for Nebraska. They hung on for dear life. Vogues, if you have to pull the trigger early, is it a little Bailey's and coffee, or are you going to go with just a red beer, an orange beer? Maybe you hate tomato juice. I don't know. I haven't made you a drink in the morning for a long time.
Yeah, that's true. I do hate tomato juice, so definitely not that. Could maybe go the orange beer route, but we're living in heady times for beer options. In fact, there's almost too many. So I think a nice like a porter or a stout, something like that to get you going. Because I don't know what the temperature is right now in Boulder. It's supposed to get pretty warm, but something nice like that gives you a little hint of coffee is probably the morning drink of choice that I would go with.
If somebody handed me a porter at 7 in the morning, I think I would refuse to be friends with them ever again. No offense, Brandon. That's not my cup of tea. A porter at 7 in the morning?
Yeah. It's thick. It's got carbs.
I mean, it's roasty, malty. Like, do you not drink coffee? If you don't drink coffee, that's
no. I love
he
coffee,
does.
but I mean, give me a cup of coffee and just give me a shot of whiskey in there. Make it easy.
Okay, well, that works too.
Make it easy.
Yeah, that's fine. But if you want some extra carbs, extra calories,
if they had
an oatmeal stout, peanut butter stout.
I wish they still had the original Four Loko with the caffeine inside. What a way to start your morning, a Four Loko, 15% alcohol.
Never actually tried that. Is that the equivalent of like Mad Dog from back in our day? Yeah. Is that's probably like the modern equivalent of that. Just cheap, horrible liquor with What is like the base liquor of that even, right? It's
malt
no
liquor.
One even knows. They don't even God.
Malt liquor, but they used to have like a whole bunch of caffeine. It was like a Monster, but also 15% alcohol. And then a whole bunch of people started, going to the hospital and dying because they were drinking too much. So they had to take the caffeine out. Yeah, which is fair.
That's which is even better to mix it with some edibles too, right? Just make your heart really think about what it wants to do. Just make your entire system think. Brandon, as you've dug in to Colorado, and everybody watched last week, and I think it was one of those games where as you're watching it, you're just like, damn, they just scored again. Like, oh crap, they just scored again. And by the time the game ended, you're like, they just won. Wow. Like they were like a threat all game offensively. They hit a lot of deep balls. But what could you draw from that game against TCU in particular? You don't really know what TCU is right now. I don't even know if you still know what Colorado is right now. Just what were your general takeaways as you assessed the matchup today?
So Colorado, I thought we had a good idea. Like Travis, we all had a pretty good idea. Travis Hunter was a really good football player, right? And Shadur Sanders, a little bit of question, I guess, coming up from FCS to FBS, but not a huge one for me. Like I thought he would be a pretty good quarterback for them. And that proved to be the case. I think the biggest one was the thing that jumped out to me early in that game was like, oh, right, Sean Lewis, the offensive coordinator, because not only are they talented on the edges, but they have an offense that is really a good match for, I think, their best path forward this season, which is, keep the passing game pretty simple and quick. Except you've got those deep threats and you're going to take 10, 12 deep shots a game. I wrote about this in my preview this week, counterread.com, if you want to check that out. It's an interesting challenge for Nebraska's defensive backs because Colorado had 8 passes that gained 300 yards, including 3 touchdowns last week. The remaining 31-ish, I can't remember the exact number, went for about 5.5 yards per attempt, which is about FBS average. So you could say, and remember TCU runs a 3-3-5. So Colorado seeing the same defense in terms of alignment back-to-back weeks. You could say with 3 safeties most of the time, Nebraska should be capable of being ready for that deep ball. But I think the move here might be to be aggressive, get up towards the line. And if you think your corners can handle the job, I think you got to challenge this Colorado passing game a little bit. And we'll see. It's high risk, high reward because you might get burned, and you probably will. But a couple of times, it's just a matter of the severity.
Brandon, if you're calling the defense today, if you're Tony White, what's your ratio of blitzing to laying off? Because that's the danger of the blitz, as you said, is you're going to get burned if you blitz, especially against this Colorado offense, the playmakers that they have. But also Colorado, unless they get behind in the football game or unless they get behind the chains, their offense is generally more dink and dunk than it is the big play. They want to dink and dunk you down the field, and then you get that one bigger play, 20, 25 yards. That sets up the score. What's your ratio of blitzing as compared to 3 or 4 man rushes?
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be a heavy blitz game for Nebraska. And, it's still too early to know what that looks like. You could blitz on, I don't know, 55% of your downs, and maybe that's low for Nebraska. When we get 7-8 games down the road, we'll know that. But you'll dial some stuff up, like when you have the upper hand defensively, when you have Colorado behind the chains. But realistically, there wasn't much time for TCU to even get to the quarterback if they were able to. So I think it's more intriguing in terms of disrupting the passing game that way. Can Nebraska's defensive line move that Colorado line back? And even then, it's just kind of like move that line of scrimmage and try and make things a little bit more uncomfortable. Because Colorado was in the shotgun the majority of the time, 3-step drop, that ball's out pretty quickly. It's just that, it's designed that way. It's a little bit of Sean Lewis's, I think, history in the MAC. Like he devised an offense that A, goes really, really fast, but B, wasn't dependent on having the best line in the conference. And he probably never did have that at Kent State. And still got that program to, I think, 2 winning seasons and another 5-7 season there. So it's a good matchup for, I think, what Colorado wanted to do.
Brendan Vogel with us from counterread.com, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal, Mark Kradak, Will Wilson here at the Blur Parties. Pregame rolling, weekend edition of Hail Varsity. Real Red Reaction follows immediately after Nebraska-Colorado. Awesome to be back here in Boulder. Vogues, it was 4 years ago. It was a halftime lead of 17-0 for Nebraska. They stretched that out to 20-0, and then the bottom fell out. Let's talk about psyche for a moment with members of the upperclassmen on this Nebraska football team that are still here, and a number of guys that traveled but didn't really play 4 years ago. They talked about it this week, Piper and company, just to give you an example. But how big of a storyline or bullet point is that for you, the finish part? We talk about the offense, the defense, Dion, Prime, and you've got Shadur and all the bells and whistles. But when push comes to shove, you get to the fourth quarter, tie game, lead, tight ball game. Are you worried about Nebraska having that in the back of their mind that, oh no, here we go again? Do you worry about that psyche element?
A little bit. I think until you see Nebraska get one of those games, it's always gonna be there. for this game in particular, and it's kind of a fascinating one if you want to play armchair psychologist, you have Nebraska. Played on Thursday night, a game plenty of people watched because it was, one of a couple of games right out of the gates. And nationally, the takeaway could have been like, gosh, same old Nebraska. I think when you dig into that game, it wasn't that. The result was, but Nebraska, I think we're going to get to the end of the season, I think, and we'll see where Nebraska goes record-wise, what conference loss to Minnesota means. But I think it's one that's going to stick. And we're going to get to November and be like, man, it really hurts to have dropped that Minnesota game. Nebraska held Minnesota to the lowest yards per play of the PJ Fleck era defensively. I mean, defensively, it was really, really good. And if you don't have 2 turnovers on your final 2 possessions, you end up walking away with the win. So I think Nebraska can use that. From Colorado's perspective, everybody expected them to get trounced last week. And they came out and they were the toast of college football this week. That becomes interesting too. Their motto all offseason was "We coming." Kind of felt like they're here already. What do you do with that now? And we don't know. We'll find out in a couple of hours. But if you just kind of sit there and stack it up against each other, it makes for a pretty interesting mental game to this piece of it.
Brandon Vogel is with us from counterread.com. And Brandon, we talked about this a little in the first hour. Could there maybe be a silver lining with Ty Robinson being able to sit out the first half and come in fresh in the second?
It could be. If you gave me the option, which we don't have the option, I would prefer to have him available all game. I think everybody would. But you're talking about a game at altitude. If Colorado kind of gets to control the game flow, they're gonna run a ton of plays. So that's all stuff that's pretty real. So having him coming in, it's almost like a wrestler running into the ring mid match. And you just go nuts for 3 minutes there. If Nebraska could script that the way they do in the squared circle, and that would be great. But I think you'll take it. It's something. And I think defensively, I think on the line, I think they'll be okay. I don't think you'll look at that first half and be like, oh, the absence of Robinson was obvious to all of us, because I think they have enough options there to get by for 30 minutes.
You're muted.
Elijah, you're muted. Come on.
I determined, I heard everybody yelling at me. I swear I was in the middle of the most beautiful question out there. Brandon Vogel's with us here from counterread.com as we get you geared up for Nebraska and Colorado. Kickoff about 2.5 hours away here. And Brandon, whenever you look at what this Husker offense faces in Colorado, a lot of people this week have talked about the importance of the rushing attack. And I'm not going to disagree with that. The rushing attack is going to be paramount. If Nebraska wins this football game, they need a solid rushing attack. But how much do you think Nebraska needs to have a competent passing attack as well to be able to open up some things for that rushing attack? Because if Colorado is able to put 8 or 9 guys in the box, they have the numbers advantage. It doesn't really matter how well you run the football. What does Nebraska need from the passing game today?
One or fewer interceptions was kind of the key number that I highlighted. You'll give a guy one because stuff happens. I think for me, you need to find a way to get Billy Kemp involved, and maybe that's not by 5, 6, 7 traditional passing targets. Maybe that's some stuff on the edge. Maybe he gets a carry and that can get him going. I think you want to see something from the tight ends. A couple of those guys having a few big catches. I wrote this week, statistically, Nebraska's offensive box score could look a lot like some of the option years for Nebraska. And if it does, that includes by law set by Tom Osborne over 25 years that you got to have a tight end who averages like 25 yards a carry or 25 yards a catch in a game. So if you could get that from somebody, they're going to need to be able to throw the ball. They're going to be able. Jeff Sims is going to have to be able to put the ball in some tight spaces. I mean, it's not just Hunter, Colorado's other corner. I'm forgetting his last name, Omarion, the Florida State transfer, really good as well. So there's some danger here, particularly when you come out of a game having thrown 3 interceptions against a Minnesota secondary that's really talented as well. So I think the lower the pass attempts, the better. I do think it's that kind of game. I think it's a run to set up the pass game. I think depending on what the score is, it's maybe we'll try a pass here. No. Actually, let's just keep running it. I do think they can have that kind of success until it just gets crazy. Like if you're then talking about 8 guys in the box, well, then you got to be able to make them pay and be smart with that. So it's not the sexiest offensive game plan, I don't think, but I think it's the way Nebraska has to go.
Vogues, what do you think that the number is? The answer is more points than Colorado. But what's that number here? Have you got a good feel at all on what this will be over under? I mean, where do you think this thing hovers? Where does it need to hover for Nebraska?
So I think the number last I checked was about 59. Let's call it 60. So you're talking about 30. Colorado's favored by 3. So you're talking about like a 32-28 game. I think it might be I think Nebraska probably needs to get to 30. And I think they've got a good shot to keep Colorado below that if you just don't have an avalanche of big plays. They're gonna have some. They're just too talented skill position wise not to. But I think Nebraska, based on defense performance against Minnesota, has a good chance to keep the points down here a little bit against Colorado. And you'll probably need to get to 30 because holding them to 14 or 17 seems like a little bit too big of an ask. So Nebraska's going to have to score certainly more than they did against Minnesota. And we'll see if they're capable of doing that. I think the big question for Nebraska is Colorado's offense is very threatening, but the onus here is the most mystery is with the Huskers when they have football.
Brandon Vogel with us from counterread.com. And Brandon, one area of the team that hasn't had a lot of discussion so far, but it's special teams. And Nebraska brings in a special teams coordinator in Ed Foley, and Matt Rule's talked about his general aggressive style and how he likes to bring in some of the better players on the team and make sure that they're actually on those different special teams. Nebraska looked really impressive in my eyes last week on the kickoff coverage, on kick return, on punt return. Just the fact that Nebraska attempted 2 returns yesterday or last weekend. You know how many they attempted all of 2022? 5. They attempted 5 punt returns the entire season in 2022. Do you think there's been a firm reset at that position or in that dimension of the game in special teams based on the small sample size that we've seen?
Yeah, it looked that way through one game. And, last week, Colorado gave up a big kickoff return to TCU. That'll be interesting. Might be different playing at home. Like you can probably at altitude just put that ball through the end zone most of the time on kickoff if you want to. But we've talked a lot about offense and defense based on watching both of those games last week. And it's one game to go on, but just definitely special teams advantage Nebraska here, based on what I saw. So the return game, it was interesting. When Nebraska got the big return to open the second half, I joked with somebody. I was like, well, that's gonna change their return average for like the next 4 weeks because there just won't be. You don't get an opportunity to return a bunch of them because I was pretty interested in Matt Rule's decision. Like, we're not going to fair catch, and then you get a big one out of the gates, and for the next 5 or 6 weeks, you're going to average starting out better than the 25 on all kickoff returns. So if they can get another one of those, and I think there's the opportunity here for that. It's one of those where you're talking about a 3-point game in terms of the line. Those kind of plays can swing it just as easily as a deep ball to Travis Hunter can.
Brandon Vogel is with us, counterread.com at Brandon L. Vogel. I got Bruce Springsteen blaring away, born in the USA, back in Boulder, here at Blur Parties, Hail Varsity Weekend Edition. YouTube channel is where you can find archives or watch live. Hail Varsity YouTube channel. And, of course, KFOR Facebook, KFOR Twitter, Hail Varsity Radio at H Varsity Radio. Vogues, as we wind down, let's talk Sims for 2 seconds, numbers, and then I need your number, the prediction.
Numbers-wise for Sims, I think unless Nebraska falls behind, which is possible, and it falls behind by more than one score, I would say. I think the passing number, the number of attempts here is going to be low, 15, 16, somewhere around there. Yep. Probably need him to be above 60%. I mentioned, okay, maybe you can get away with one interception. I think multiple becomes a problem. You'd like to see Nebraska find the end zone through the air. If they are having kind of a good rushing day, not a rushing day where they're like, oh yeah, they busted 4 40-yard runs. You'd like to see them get in the end zone through the air. So it could be a fairly 10 of 16, 1 touchdown, 1 interception day. And I think that could get you there, particularly if he's able to contribute the way he did last week in the run game. So it's mostly a be smart ask for Sims, I think, for me in this game. And if he does that, I think Nebraska, I like Nebraska quite a bit in this spot. It's going to be close either way, but I would take Nebraska 31-24, I think, at this point.
And Brandon, if that final score holds 31-24, how does Nebraska get there? Who is their MVP in today's game?
One of the corners, probably Quentin Newsome or Malcolm Hartzog. I'll take Hartzog for now, I guess. Though you could give me either of them, I'd feel pretty good about it.
Vogues with us here, Brandon Vogel at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter, counterread.com. Vogues, be good. How can folks find you, and tell them about Counter Read real quick?
Yeah, you can find us at counterread.com. It's a twice weekly newsletter for paid subscribers. I'm doing that with Aaron Sorensen, somebody people know well if they follow Husker Athletics. It's been going great so far. So you can check us out there. We also do a couple of free newsletters a week if you want to try it out. And if you're interested in moving into the paid subscriber realm, you do get a 7-day free trial before that kicks in. So plenty of opportunity to check it out. We'll have a post-game video out after this one. And at that point, we'll know everything we don't know at this point.
Vogues, we love you. Appreciate you. Thanks for coming on today.
Guys. Have a good one.
All right. There he is, Brandon Vogel. And we welcome in the Iron Horse. He is coffeed up. Gary Sharp.
Hi.
Sharpie, I've already been fingerprinted, so it'll save some time for later.
Wow. I've never seen Elijah dressed up like this.
Exactly. By the way, Gary, we started the show with that. Look at the influence that Chris Schmidt has had.
He had leather racing gloves as we wove through the mountains this morning at 4 a.m.
None of this is true. This is all lies.
I
had this outfit picked
Palace
first.
Could go
Schmitty
on the side wheels.
Schmitty copied me. I picked this outfit first. I was driving it completely safely.
I'm going to
this
copy
morning.
you. I'm going to add about a foot to my height.
Hey, listen.
This is all bogus.
We need to set this up. We need to set this up for the radio audience here. All right.
No, there's no more radio audience.
We're good.
There's no more radio audience.
Oh, we don't need to set it. Oh, we punted them?
Yeah, they through the first hour. Now they're all over.
We need to set it up. We need to set it up for the podcast listeners, right?
Yes.
People that aren't watching, right? Some people are driving, they're not watching their video. So Elijah has a polo shirt, top button unbuttoned, KFOR quarter zip on top, right? Logo on the right chest, sleeves rolled up just shy of the elbow, right? And then you look over next to him, and there's Chris Schmidt, dressed completely identically. And Elijah tries to call out Chris and be like, well, because apparently Chris wore that same quarter zip yesterday, right? Dirty hippie. He's in Colorado.
Yeah.
Dirty hippie. He's like completely. That's where Chris lives right now.
I'm
right?
Danny
That's
DeVito.
where
He's Schwarzenegger.
Hey,
right?
it's pretty cool. I don't know that we've ever done this on Saturday mornings. Father and son are co-hosting the show.
And
that's so funny. That's wrong.
I mean, that is so.
Elijah's like, I want no part of that.
That is disrespectful to my father.
Elijah's trying
Parsons
to rebel.
Kind of pissed too.
Elijah's trying to rebel though. He's parting his hair to the other side, just to be a little bit crazy in the family here. He's got the opposite part.
We want to.
Should I go for the kill shot? Should I go for the kill shot? I'm not going to. It'd be a lie anyway.
No, go for it. We want to thank our friends at Lazare's and Sauter Heyman for helping power these road shows. We love you and thank you for it. Of course, our friends at Gary Michaels, Big Red of the Rockies, for helping us doing shows out here this week. Sharpie, how you feeling, man? All week long, your Twitter has been sweet. Iconic moments of Nebraska-Colorado in this rivalry. It's back. I want it every year and going to happen. But this is really cool. And Vegas has been weird with the line. You've got the storylines. It's been the week of Dion and a great opportunity for Nebraska too. That's the other side of this. You gotta love this because, I mean, you've seen your fair share. You've covered your fair share of Nebraska-Colorado.
Yeah, I'm glad that the game is finally here. I do think it's not a good scheduling thing by Nebraska because I saw the Denver Post this morning and Nebraska is actually playing America's team. I think that's unfair to Nebraska. I mean, I don't think they should. I don't think they're ready to play an NFL team yet. But how great is this? You know what? Regardless of what happens today, and I think all of our vibe is kind of the same about how this game's going to unfold. It's nice to have a game that is relevant, that Nebraska is involved in, that you can get excited about. You're not dreading going into this game. That everybody, 95% of the country is talking about one team. They're ignoring Nebraska, which is perfectly fine. We get it. That's the prime effect, and they deserve the flowers for what they got last week. But it's significant for Nebraska because the only way you can change the narrative is by production. You can't just say things and all of a sudden people go, yeah, you got to show it. And that's a great opportunity for Nebraska today. It is a golden opportunity for Nebraska football on this stage with everything against them except for their fan base. I think the Nebraska fan base has become more unified as the week has gone on, especially after last Thursday, that I can't wait for kickoff. I can't wait to see the emotions, and I can't wait to see how Nebraska makes corrections from last week on how they handle a brand new opponent that they know more about than they did a week ago.
Gary, today's game is the most relevant game Nebraska has played in since ...
Biggest game since when?
Last Thursday night against Minnesota.
From a national standpoint. National
standpoint, I will say when they played I will go back to Scott Frost's first game.
Okay.
Because,
Akron or Colorado?
Well, Akron, and then it shifted to Colorado. But there's some games in there. They just have never been against a foe that has drawn this much attention or is a one-of-a-kind in Deion Sanders. I think the easy answer is what I just said about last week. But it's, you have to search to find a game where there was this big, where everybody is abuzz. Like everybody is excited. And again, I want to go back to the more attention Colorado has gotten this week, I think the more amped up the Nebraska fan base has had. Even if you were very skeptical on Monday, you have gone like, whoa, okay. Because haven't you guys sensed the shift in it? At first it was, oh, geez, Nebraska's going to get Black Saturday today. Now it has shifted to, man, there's a lot of things. If you pull back the layers and you go inside of the game, if Nebraska does blank, 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 Nebraska's got a good opportunity to win this football game this afternoon.
Like Nebraska's got a healthy respect. Nebraska fans have a healthy respect for Deion Sanders, going back to his playing days, right? Like Nebraska traditionally, not the the crap talking kind of type. They don't really like that. They want to see you prove it on the field. To speak soft, carry a big stick type thing. But then when you see somebody like Deion, you're just like, man, that dude backs it up. Right?
Yeah.
And then you think about some of the favorites in Nebraska, like Broderick Thomas talked mess, right? Johnny Mitchell talked mess. Nebraska's had some dudes that talked some smack. But Colorado does wear that bravado well,
Yep.
don't they? Under Deion Sanders.
Well,
and they're in their element today.
So the scary thing, and I think you have to separate. So you have Deion Sanders, and then you have Prime. Deion coached 60 minutes of football on Saturday in Fort Worth, and then Prime came out. So he's got a split personality, and that's how you have to look at it. He's got the Prime, and then he's got the coach. But the scary thing about Colorado, and they have some really good players. I know his son is a really, really good quarterback. The guy that I really, really like is Dylan Edwards. I think Dylan Edwards might be their best skill guy. Okay. People might say, whoa, Travis Hunter, but watch today. But here's the scary thing about Colorado. When you have stuck around and you have grinded for 8 months and you're wondering, why is he doing this? Why do we repeat his sayings? Why? And then you get validated on the football field for everything you put in. That just adds to the swagger. And that can be dangerous. You're absolutely right, Mark. But how long does that last? If you play a team that I think Nebraska, and I think Matt Rule will manage this game better than he did last Thursday, you say, we got one way to go, boys, and that is to punch him in the mouth and keep punching him and punching him and punching him and see what their reaction is. So it's a crazy balance of the Colorado emotion, the emotion of the game, and this newfound swagger that was there that just got amplified for Colorado that Nebraska doesn't have yet. And how do they handle that when it's in their face and maybe the game starts to slip away?
It's Gary Sharp with us, a weekend edition of Hail Varsity. And Gary, we get a question in here from RS. I guess it's more of a thought. Altitude could be a killer for the Huskers late. Your concern level with that on a scale of 1 to 10, the Huskers playing at altitude today?
I think it's real. You guys have seen enough. I think it's a real thing. And Nebraska will have everything on the sidelines from oxygen to take care of guys. I mean, that's something you do have to factor in on how you play the game. But it probably in the moment you don't realize it. But we've seen throughout the years, it's affected Nebraska, a couple of different players. I mean, everybody handles it differently. The 99 game, I thought that 99 team was really, really hurt by the altitude because that seemed like a long 4-hour game that went to overtime. So I don't know. I think at the beginning of the game, you don't have to worry. You don't worry about it. But then you kind of start managing it as you go along, just being cognizant of, okay, how is this affecting us? Is guys wearing down? But I know Nebraska, you'll see on the sidelines, they've taken every precaution to deal with the altitude. They've done all the research. They've talked to people that have played in Colorado, have played in the altitude or on the staff, so they're going to be fine.
Well, two people that did not factor in the altitude today, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbal. We still have to walk to the stadium.
I was up early. The nebulizer has the brake in case of emergency. All I've been doing is doing the asthma meds, and it's okay. I feel good today. I'm out of the mountains finally.
Hey, 20,000 people from Nebraska fans are going to be there. Oh my gosh. There's 60,000 from Colorado. That's the thing that is Deion going to be upset? He's going to run out of the tunnel, and there's going to be 20,000 people in his stadium that are not his fans. How crazy is that? And they make a big deal about it is Colorado. Man, the Colorado's got outnumbered the Nebraska fans. Can you imagine if 20,000 visiting fans came to Lincoln?
It'd be crazy. And that's the thing. I mean, all Thursday, Friday from Denver, Sharpie, Kranak, and Elijah has been buff student whining that they can't get seats because of the way they do the ticketing. It's all right. You got to put your name in the queue Sunday. You've got a relative that's a student.
Yeah, my cousin's a freshman at CU, and she's been trash talking me all week about this game. And guess who's not going to the game? Her.
She can't get in.
What the hell you let her in? What the hell you let her in your family?
Hey,
for?
my cousin Jason went to Colorado. Didn't finish here. You know.
I'm kidding. Yeah, Colorado would be a great place to just go to school, but you have to cheer for. We got a few folks. We got a few folks in the comments here. We can't put it on the air or on the screen, but Justin had mentioned altitude BS. Here's the thing. Look, it's a factor today. It's not an excuse or a reason. Like you can't use it in that way.
It's just
but
real.
It is a factor. And Nebraska's adjustment to it is going to matter. And I go back to the 2015 Miami game when Nebraska was playing at 3:30 with not a single cloud in the sky and 5,000% humidity as the sun comes out. It was brutally hot, like unbelievably hot. As Nebraska's running out of the tunnel, you're like, oh my God, how do those dudes have helmets on right now? This is awful. And they played like crap that whole game until the sun went down. And there started to be a little shade and a little breeze. All of a sudden, Nebraska comes roaring. Weather and the conditions are absolutely a factor in these games. You can't say it any other way. And Gary, I guess to that point, we had talked in the first hour and a little bit here in the second too about, is there maybe a silver lining with Ty Robinson being able to rest, being able to chill in the first half, and then you just kind of drop him onto the scene in the second half, completely rested and ready to go?
I absolutely agree. Now, you have to put yourself into a position that when he enters the game, you're in a good spot. But I think that's kind of a hidden thing is, it was a dumb play by him against Minnesota. He's serving the crime. But coming into the start of the second half, if Nebraska has established themselves, absolutely. Because you know what? That defensive line held their own. I like the long game with the defensive line. I didn't think they would be as far along and as successful as they were against Minnesota. Yes, that's definitely because that's an area that Nebraska has to win. If Nebraska is not winning their D-line against Colorado's O-line, you got no shot today. But if you're able to hold your own and have success, and then all of a sudden here comes a guy that maybe is your second best defensive lineman, comes in and he's fresh, ready to go, and he hasn't played the 35 plays in the first half, absolutely that could work as an advantage to you.
And Gary, to that point, which level of the defense do you think needs to have the best data? The D-line needs to get pressure on Shedeur Sanders, needs to make him uncomfortable. The linebackers, it's going to be really important for them to get their pass coverage drops. Colorado loves the crossing routes over the middle of the field. They're going to be big. And then, obviously, the defensive back room with the talent that Colorado has in their wide receiver room. The answer is probably a little bit of everyone, but which group needs to have the best day?
I think linebackers. I think, TCU missed 20 tackles. Nebraska only missed 6 against Minnesota, and they tackled better in the first game for Nebraska than I thought. Here's the problem. Elijah, you just brought up middle of the field. Those shallow crosses, TCU had trouble not really defending them, but tackling in space. So it's going to be a day where it's not just a solo tackle. Nebraska's going to have to rally to the ball. They're going to have some gang tackling. But, guys, Luke Reimer, if he wants to make money and he's a Sunday guy, today is the day to make money because they're going to put him in space. What are they going to do to attack Nick Henrich? Because I worry there about the speed. And then also, what is Sherman and Borders going to do? I didn't like their combo against Minnesota. They weren't noticeable. So I think that second level has to be on par today to be really, really good, but they've got to tackle. They got to keep plays in front of them, and Nebraska can't get leaky on defense. So those linebackers, I think, have to be the best part for Nebraska. And if they are, then, man, that's a good sign for Nebraska. And not just they're good because they're tackling and Colorado's moving the ball, but they're making plays and maybe getting a turnover. Because I think there'll be a play in this game that'll be a crazy sequence where it's a tip pass or something like that. And can Nebraska take advantage? When they have an opportunity to pick off Sanders, they have to pick him off. They can't drop the football.
Sharpie, I want to go to Sims, and it's obvious, but the question is, what's his rebound like? Great skill set. I know that there's respect by Colorado for his mobility, his ability to run some options, some zone read. The passing game is concerning to Nebraska. How do you think Sims performs today, and what's the ask of Satterfield?
Here's my fear is that Colorado makes Jeff Sims a quarterback. The worst thing that could happen to Nebraska today is that Colorado forces Jeff Sims to sit in the pocket. That is not his strength whatsoever. His locking on to wide receivers, I don't know if you can coach that out of him because that's kind of in his DNA. But what you can coach out of him, I go back to Minnesota. They did a really good job schematically dialing up running plays. Now, I worry about Nebraska's quarterback handoff game under center, so I think you're going to see a lot of stuff in shotgun. But you're going to have to use the legs. We talked last Saturday, and we're like, wow, this is not sustainable to have him run the ball 19 times. I don't care. Today, you got to win a football game. If you got to run him 19 times today, you run him 19 times because I think that's where he's really, really good. I think you'll see him roll out of the pocket today and cut down half the field, but he also needs some help. It can't be Jeff Sims on his own. Sanders could win a game on his own. Jeff Sims cannot. So Jeff Sims needs the front five to be very good, but he needs wide receivers to fight like hell to get open and then find those guys. But I think they will help Jeff Sims more than Jeff Sims will help himself today. The way they manage the football game, and they don't put Sims in situations where last week they put him in situations that are not his strength to make plays. I think today they help him along. But with that said, he's a Division I quarterback that's played a lot of football. He's on scholarship. He's your starting quarterback. At some point today, he's going to need to make a wow play for Nebraska to win the football game. Is it going to be early or is it going to be late? That's where you go with the balance of, there's Jeff Sims. I just hope Nebraska doesn't have Adrian Martinez in 2023 with poorer wide receivers.
Listen, Gary Sharp is with us and talking about Nebraska and Colorado, going to kick off in about 2 hours and 15 minutes. Gary, let's dive even deeper into the offense because I think there's a broad agreement on what Nebraska's approach should be, right? Steady diet of runs, controlled passing in terms of play action, just kind of keep it simple on the reads, that sort of thing. Let's dive even a little deeper. And I want Sims to be a part of the quarterback run game. And I think that's what Colorado is going to try to take away. In order to do that, all things considered, if you're Satterfield, do you just go super heavy diet tailback, super heavy diet end arounds, almost like don't show Sims in the run game for a while, right? Establish the other stuff first. Establish all that other stuff first to where you forget about it, and then you spring it on them a little bit later once you have them overcommitting to, run action to tailbacks.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think it's simple against Sizzle today. Nebraska needs to play what Matt Rule likes to play. Nebraska can't do what Deion Sanders likes to do, and a lot of what you just said, Mark, is true. I also think you're going to see an element of this in the run game is they got to establish it early. Gabe Ervin is a rhythm guy, so he's got to get a sweat on. You can't have Gabe Ervin carry the ball once in the first quarter, then come back in the second quarter. He's got to lather up. I mean, we've all were in the shower this morning. We're putting all the soap and we're getting all ready, so you're all fired up for when the water hits you. Chris is against showering. It's okay. Wife understands. They've been together for a long time. But you need to get Ervin going. You need to get Ervin going early and a lot. He needs to build up the carries, and you pound and you pound and you pound, and you try and throw body blows. I think you try and do stuff today that you establish in the first quarter that all of a sudden is going to break in the fourth quarter. This is the old school mentality. You're also going to need Anthony Grant in this game at some point, but you have to be careful because Colorado chases fumbles. They tackle for fumbles. So you got to be careful on that. But here's an element, guys, I think we're going to see. And I think we'll see it early is an unbalanced line. Those jumbo packages. TCU did it a couple of times and had success, and they really never went back to it. Nebraska, before the Minnesota game, they had the Sam Sledges of the world were working at tight end. They had guys that were going with an unbalanced line in practice. They never really used it against Minnesota at all. I think today you'll see a little bit more of some unbalanced line and maybe even more if it's successful. But they've got to help themselves. They've got to have every element in there to help them run the football, and it starts with the guys up front. But then also it has to be if Ervin and Grant get to that second level, man, you got to get to the third level. You got to find a way to get yards. But also you can't be greedy. If you're just getting 4 or 5 at a pop, that's okay. You don't need 8 to 12 every run.
Gary Sharp is with us here, the weekend edition of Hail Varsity. And Gary, you mentioned something a few minutes ago. I want to go back to it. You said that Colorado has a guy in Shedeur Sanders that can win a game single-handedly. Nebraska doesn't have that in Jeff Sims. I want to get your take on if this is a close game in the fourth quarter, if it's a 3-point game, if it's a 7-point game, what can Nebraska go to in those big-time moments? Because it's been 4 or 5 years now of Nebraska in those big-time moments in the fourth quarter. They haven't had a guy they can go to. Is there anybody, any candidates for today if it's a close game in the fourth as we expect it to be?
I think it's go back to the guy that is the head man. What did he say? Win the fourth quarter, run the ball. We want 75 rushing yards. All right, if you're in the fourth quarter and it's a ball game, find a way to get 75 rushing yards. There's also the element of today. I mean, guys, imagine the scenario. Nebraska didn't have the second possession of the game didn't come until late against Minnesota in the first half. But look if you are limiting possessions and you're finding a way to churn drives. Now, TC only had 2 drives that were 10 plays or more because they were a little bit built to get into a track meet with Colorado and keep up with them. Nebraska needs to find a way to execute that 4-minute offense, not in the fourth quarter, but at the beginning of the game. And when they got a chance to finish drives, finish them. But I think it's not a single person, Elijah. I think if you get to the fourth quarter, it's a team effort. But if you have said we want to get to 75 rushing yards in the fourth quarter, then find a way to do that to help you win a football game and not lose a football game. Jeff Sims' legs help Nebraska. Jeff Sims' arm help Minnesota. Do what helps Nebraska.
Talk to me about Teddy. What do you get? What's Teddy look like today on that left side? Because Teddy Prohaska, because you got a guy in Turner that was struggling last week.
Well, I mean, we all say, hey, I don't want to be. Turner Corcoran can't play tackle in college. He just can't because he struggles there. Move him inside, he looks different. But you know what looks different, guys? And if you went back and watched the game, the offensive line was good. They weren't great. They were good. It wasn't like they were very, very poor. It's just that left side of the line, and it wasn't just Corcoran. It was another guy next to him who's played a lot of football at Nebraska. So that left side was porous against Minnesota. But you guys have watched enough football, and I know how you feel about Teddy, Mark. Teddy Prohaska, and he's going to play today. When he is with that line, the vibe is just completely different. Whether Teddy is playing at his ceiling, which we don't even know what is yet because he hasn't played a ton of football, but it's just a different feeling when Prohaska is at tackle compared to Corcoran. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah.
No, it's confidence.
100% right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's also, let's be honest too, it is a size and ability thing. I mean, Prohaska is as big of an offensive lineman as there is in football, period, not just college, talking NFL. The dude is an absolute beast of a human being. I mean, he's almost 6'10", right? Yep. He's like 320 and he's lean.
Yeah, some people even said he's gotten taller in the offseason.
Dude, there are just so few human beings on the planet that are built like that guy. And Nebraska has one, right?
Yep.
The other thing he does in the run game, God, he just covers so much damn space. He gets there quick and he just walls off. Even if he doesn't make contact, you got to get around that. He is an absolute difference maker at that position. And I guess to that end, if he cannot go today with what we saw from Corcoran in game one, and honestly, what we saw last year, well, and honestly, what we saw probably the year before too, if you're Satterfield and Rule, maybe you don't want to be hamstrung like this, but you just have to give help over there in passing situations. I mean, if that means putting less guys out on routes and having someone there to chip, extra tight end, extra running back, like, is there any scenario where you can afford to just leave Corcoran one-on-one in a passing situation?
I don't know. That's tough. Here's another element, guys. And this is what I picked up is Nebraska became so right-handed against Minnesota.
Yeah.
Jeff Sims very rarely throws to his left. And if he does, it's not good.
Yeah.
So Jeff Sims is always looking right. Nebraska did a lot of stuff running right. Nebraska became too right-handed because they were afraid of the left hand. I don't know what you do, Mark, other than helping that side out. Do you run unbalanced on the left side to help those guys? At some point, though, you have to say, you guys are on scholarship. Do your job. We can't always be there to bail you out. But Nebraska can't be so right-handed today. They have to be balanced because that's pretty easy to pick up on film that Jeff Sims is always looking right and is very uncomfortable throwing to his left.
Could you real quick? Real quick. Could you do something like just flip Nuri and Piper, and you know what I mean? Yeah. Just to kind of spread the competence along the line rather than being so right-handed.
You could, but see, I think Nuri will play better today. I think he hadn't played football in a year. And so getting back into the mix. So I think he will play much better than he played against Minnesota. He wasn't terrible, but he was a guy that we expected to be one of their top offensive linemen. I think Piper is more comfortable playing both left and right, but I would stick with what they have now. It comes down to, guys, you got to do your job. Okay. We've talked about all offseason how you guys are making strides. Do your job. Now, today, they're going against guys that are not as big as the guys they went against last week. So are you able to impose your will? I don't know. It's all a chess match, but today for Nebraska to win, it's not about guys in a track meet and trying to slow down a Hunter or Newsome making money to go to the NFL. I think they should just put on the board in the locker room and they should make a t-shirt, rule the trenches. If you rule the trenches, you got a chance to get on that plane and come back to Lincoln. And all of a sudden, the narrative on Nebraska is different in 2023.
Sharpie, I want to wrap up there and talk on the narrative, just the importance of today, the outlook. You come back 0-2 or 1-1. The outlook, if you are 0-2, is today make or break, in your opinion, for postseason for Nebraska?
That's a good question. I know what people want to say about, okay, the immediacy of stop playing the long game. What's going on right now? You have to step back and go, okay, we're in it for the long haul here. We understand where we were before the season began. 0-2 is unfortunate. How do you respond? I think a lot of it today looks at what is the course correction? What happened against Minnesota that looks different today instead of, oh my God, the same thing against Minnesota looks the same today. Nebraska is going to be fighting it. But the bottom line is, regardless if Nebraska wins today, gets to a bowl game, we are all in agreement, and we can't go back and change it because we spent all season talking about it. Matt Rule has to squeeze everything out of this roster to make them successful. If that's just getting to 6 wins, that's what they're doing in 2023, and we'll worry about 2024. And that's kind of like today is you're going to have to squeeze everything out of this roster to win a football game. But I do like Nebraska. I think there are advantages to be had, but Nebraska's got to have ball security. They got to play smart. And most importantly, from the sidelines, they have to manage this game really, really well. They have to manage 60 minutes of football from possession to possession and also limit possessions.
Got a score for me?
I said it on Tuesday. I like Nebraska 27-24. It's not a late Tristan Alvano field goal. It's Nebraska taking a knee in a victory formation in Folsom Field.
Ooh.
V for victory, says the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp.
Like it.
Sharpie, we love you. Thanks for jumping on with us this morning from Boulder, brother.
Hey, be safe. Don't get arrested. Hopefully we'll see you in Lincoln for the nighttime game next Saturday.
That'll be good. We'll see you, bud. Take care.
Gary, be good, man.
Cranack, we got to pack up and head to the stadium. You got a score for me?
I do want to know. I do want to know here before we get out. If you're one of the people in the stream right now and you want more coverage, we've been rolling for about 2 hours. You can on YouTube rewind back to the beginning of the show and get more of our insight. If you caught it late, if you woke up late and you want more Hail Varsity content, you can always rewind back to the beginning of the show. Schmitty, Cranack, and myself, as well as Will, we rolled for about an hour before Brandon and Gary came on and gave some insight. So if you want to check that out, feel free, scroll back. You can get more of our insight. But as Schmitty said, we do need to get packed up and head down to the stadium.
He's next to me, and I can't hear him. We got all sorts of Husker fans here at Blur. We love Blur. We appreciate them having us out yet again here in Boulder. It's just been an incredible experience here since we got out here on Thursday. And we'll be back at you right after the show.
Mark?
Real Red Reaction. Yeah. Mark Cranack. Yeah.
Mark, do you have a score prediction before we get out here?
I say that there's a defense mechanism built in here. 34-24 CU. I don't want it to be the case.
Well, I shouldn't have asked. I'm sorry. Well, I also picked CU today, 23-21. Schmitty's the lone guy here who's got a Husker win. So,
well, Schmidt, ever the optimist. I'm hoping it happens too.
I picked Minnesota last week. I call it like I see it. And I think Nebraska goes to the body enough and plays better football.
Okay. All right. Been waiting on that for a while. Let's see if they do it. Hey, go stop by that suite. You got to check it out. Fresh baked in Bear Creek.
We'll do that. Love you much. Thank you so much, Cranack. Appreciate you, man.
Be safe, y'all. Be safe.
All right. Check it out. Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbal, at Schmidt_radio. We'll talk to you about 2 o'clock Central Time, KFOR, KFORnow.com, Real Red Reaction. Enjoy, and we'll talk soon.